Welcome to Mindful Edge, where leadership meets science, practice, and honest inquiry.
Where we get curious, get grounded, and get our hands dirty.
Let's dive in.
Today on Mindful Edge, we're exploring compassionate leadership as a lived and embodied practice, the kind that shapes how we show up under pressure, how we make decisions, and how we hold ourselves and others with humanity. And with me today in the room is Cindy, a transformational coach and founder of Mind Garage. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Mel. It's lovely to be here on this beautiful morning. Lovely to be contributing to your community in this space, talking about compassionate leadership.
Yes. So it hasn't always been in that space for yourself. Like you've had a time where you're at the intersection of identity and nervous system and compassionate leadership now. But there was a time that there was a collapse in your life that led you to this path. Do you want to share with us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, I think my life in itself is, I started studying in terms of sports science and biomechanics and human movement, and then ended up in education, and then ended up retraining myself and going into remedial therapies, and then going into business in that space. And it's been a journey of re-identification. And I think in terms of collapse in my own compassionate leadership, there was a big turning point around the COVID period of time, whereby the business was shut down. I had to stand down all staff. And at the same time in my own life, I was dealing with my mum going into full-time aged care, my beautiful partner and her child moving into under the one roof. And it was a period of time whereby I asked of myself some serious questions about where I wanted to go with my own businesses and where I wanted to go with my own life and how I wanted to show up for myself in my relationships, both with, my aging mum, knowing there was a finite period of time there, but also in, bringing together a family under the one roof. So it was a time of where the universe kind of hits you with a number of different things. And it was a point whereby I had a look at my real purpose and what I wanted to contribute in the space moving forward. So around March 2020 was where it hit a crux in that space. A weekend of, having the business shut from, the federal government saying that it was a foreclosure, and then standing down staff on a Monday, closing and shutting down a couple of different sites, and navigating out of leases with really good, people that I loved working with, but we had to minimise expenses at that time because I had 5 sites. And then, standing staff down and them going on JobKeeper, and how that disrupted the culture of a team because we were shut for 8 weeks. It was the global pandemic that was a particularly challenging time in a number of different areas in my life. And, at the start of that year, my wife was made redundant for no reason that, in terms of her own doing. It was purely the business was sold and they decided to take over the management piece. And even though she had created great success in the business, it was completely irrelevant to the decision that was made. So there were some really significant changes that went on in my life at that time. And it led me to think about, what is it that I do and where do I want to go next? And maybe this is a time to pause myself and have a look at, stepping forward in my own life in that space.
Yeah. And that kind of helped, like, at least take that pause and then helped you where you are today. Is that was the stepping stones towards that?
It was a forced pause. It was and those people have been through the COVID and went through closures at that time. It was like, I don't want to stop working. The business was having its best week, like 3 weeks prior to us having to close, and the government was gradually putting more and more restrictions on the business. 3 weeks prior to that, we were having our best weeks. The team was functioning really well. We had a retention of staff. We hadn't had anyone move out of the business for around 5 years. And so it was a really tight team. And so it did force me to step back and have a look at things and go, is this, am I at a space whereby I want to pass this business on to someone else? And I think when it did reopen, and we did, struggle in a number of different ways to get everything moving again, clients flooded back in, but JobKeeper changed the culture of the team. And, we were in a different world after that period of time. And it definitely led me to question, in my own life, 20 years of education, 25 years in business with 4 different award-winning businesses, and then 40 years of mindfulness and mindset. And me during that period of time using all of those tools. Coaching was something that I was doing. Mentoring was something that I was doing. And I thought it was an area that I really wanted to expand into and believed that it was the best use of my skill set at that time.
Did you move more online because that's how the world shifted, or?
Well, because the business at that time, the businesses that I had, and we shut them in March, and I actually ended up selling it in October. It was a hands-on business. It was remedial therapies. It was about touch, and that didn't transcend to online. Even though there was an attempt to do that, people weren't interested in that. And even though we went online with a team to maintain contact and talk about X, Y, and Z, we definitely adapted to that space. But I don't believe it was until, after I sold the business and then I looked at the coaching avenue that over, in 2021, 2022, that people had started to accept that we could meet and connect at a deeper level online. And that's when I sort of moved the business into that space and really lent into the coaching sort of around 2022, 2023, in a more formal full-time capacity. So very much a lot of it is online now. But I do love also, I think there's something beautiful about face-to-face. So I will fly around Australia and meet with clients just to spend time in each other's presence. And, with the clients that I do have here in Adelaide, I think it's still very powerful.
I love that because connection is something we all need, and yes, it disappeared. So that's when you started, or was that through your whole life that you've been working with high achieving leaders and in that space of compassionate leadership? Is that something that's born out of this, or something that was in your businesses throughout?
Yeah, I had been approached while I had the businesses. So I've probably been coaching for around 15 years, having delivered around 10,000 hours. And it was ad hoc to start with, that people would approach me and say, could you please mentor me in this space? And then because of my work in the mindset and the mindfulness and how I would bring that into the physical therapies and how people picked up on that sort of osmotically through the treatments, that people started approaching me because I was working on high level performers and high level leaders and professional athletes and professional musicians within the business. They then started approaching me for more mindset work and looking at compassionate leadership in that space and how they could bring compassion to themselves in certain situations, but also to those people that they worked with. So it happened kind of ad hocly. And then I formalised it by getting some accreditation, around that COVID period of time, and started to do some extra training and get really interested in the skills of coaching and how I could apply the mindfulness and the mindset pieces and all of the studies that I had done previously with people like, Brene Brown's Dare to Lead and her EQ studies, because I'm always learning something and studying something or other. So it was kind of like bringing together those skills. And I think that it has been more formalised in the last 3 to 4 years, but it was just a gradual build up. There was obviously a need there for it. And like I said, it just became more of a formalised piece. And now I work with business owners as well as, the anti-retirement experts who are sitting in their field, highly skilled, got decades of knowledge, and are looking to transition into something else into their life.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned emotional intelligence. You've done a lot of learning in that area. And how do you see that evolving more in the modern leadership that we see today?
Oh, I think it is a critical piece.
Mm.
I think it's foundational in terms of our own self-regulation when we're working with people and when we're working with teams. There's an incredible amount of conflict that is existing around in the workplace and in amongst teams, and I think compassionate leadership, the use of and having a really good skill level in EQ is important, like I said, for self-regulation, but also in observing and assisting others with their own regulation through questioning techniques, so that we're able to respond to different situations and we're able to look at bringing that within the workplace, within our teams and within at the C level at a broader level. um, I think it is absolutely key, and the leaders that I have worked with who have been highly successful with their teams have a humanness, and they're very grounded in their own values, and they're very clear, and they're able to regulate their own emotional state, to bring a calmness, to bring a preparedness, to provide empathy, to bring strength with their boundaries and frameworks and expectations, but they do deliver something on a very human level within what are the restrictions or the frameworks of the businesses that they work in.
I would think that self-awareness would be really important into that too. If they're more aware of what's happening in their nervous system and in their body, and that will help them to be more aware of their staff and what's going on within their world.
Very much so. I think our ability to self-regulate is I think becoming even more important as we go into a world whereby we are being fire hosed with information, or potentially fire hosed with information, with the use of AI, and all sorts of information is at our fingertips. And people are spending roughly around 5 hours on their devices per day, even in their relaxation time, and that's raising our level, our allopathic stress level. Our nervous systems are vibrating at a higher level, and I think without being able to find a quiet space in order to notice that within one's own physical body and our own nervous system, and to be able to clearly see through the use of metacognition our thinking, and then also the associated feelings with that, and then the associated habits that come from that. I think it's becoming more and more important for us to be able to respond to ourselves with compassion, and those in the world with empathy and compassion. And that's, if we want to do our bit for world peace, I think it really starts with ourselves, and then looking out at others with love and kindness. In our leadership, it's I think it's vital moving forward in this modern world.
Yes, which is why I was doing self-love and inner leadership as a first theme, which you responded to months ago, because I thought that was a really important thing that's so missing in society today. And I've seen it like my journey coming out of trauma from the military as a leader, and then the last decade really rebuilding myself. And in that, it was the first time in my life, even though I was in supportive roles and leadership roles, that was the first time that I stopped and went, no, hang on, I've got to look after me here. I have to take the time out to heal myself and to have a bit of self-compassion. And I've been growing through those series of and learning that I haven't really had the time to care for me, because I've always cared for everybody else. And I think I was running away from that. And part of that, I've put in unplugged days. I've got my phone time down to 1 hour, 20 minutes a day. And I love that. And it has brought down all those cortisol levels and all the, and with all the stress and trauma that I was going through and trying to work that through, I feel now just that it's really calmed down. Everything in my nervous system's calmed down. And then I could be me again. And yeah, it's such a journey. But I think, and it's an important journey, that if we could find what we need in life and really go for that, and if that means to stop and reflect and actually switch off, that's some of the best things we can do as a leader.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think all of us have in our lives various traumas and life experience that we don't get out of this. It's not all smooth sailing in life, and I marvel at people's resilience who come to me, and when they speak in the confidential bubble that is coaching and that judgment-free space, that they do share, trauma with a capital T. And then some of us have trauma that is, a little bit smaller. It is nonetheless imprinted on us, and we carry that with us generally through childhood. And those patterns that we take with us, from little ones, and then, they get embedded, and then they still seem to play out in certain areas of our life. It's bringing awareness to that, and then sort of asking ourselves, is that really healthy for me? Is it really helpful? What is the identity I want to step into now? Who is it that I am now? What is it that I value? And particularly when we're in leadership roles, that's a critical role to play, to enable us to move into that next version of ourselves. I would say that's some of the most valuable work we can ever do. And as a mindset business coach, the biggest handbrake on any business is the mindset of the business owner, without doubt, and the patterns and the 8 clear mindsets they bring through into it, and how that impairs themselves, and how that creates patterns of behavior that stops the business from growing. And it's the same with how that then imparts on their teams. You're looking at oneself with love and having a look at, deeply, who am I? And the most common response I would get from that is, oh, I don't really know.
Mm.
Like, what is it that you love? Oh, you know what? I don't know, because I haven't actually asked that question for such a long time that I don't know what's really important to me. And it's okay, I think, for us to be in that space of asking those questions and being in confusion or chaos or not knowing, because it then creates the space to bring some curiosity to say, well, oh, that's right, I love playing in the ocean. Oh, that's right, I love looking at campfires. Oh, that's right, I love seeing live concerts. And however that is, whatever it is that brings you joy and fulfillment, and how you define yourself, it's worth sitting in the quiet. There's a beautiful proverb of, the answers we seek are in the quiet we so clearly avoid. It's not those exact words, but generally we need to create the space in which to look inwardly and go, well, where am I at the moment? What's working? What's not working? What do I really want in my life? Very powerful conversations with ourselves.
And I think, if people don't stop and do something like that, then you're just running on empty and running on towards burnout, towards being more stressed, and not being the best for themselves nor for their team. There's a lot of insight in there, and as well as there's so many people out there, I think, that don't know how to care for themselves or to have love for themselves, because we don't talk about that a lot in society. And so, some people would say, loving myself is selfish. Some will say, that they don't know where to start. So if a leader was feeling stressed and they're listening and they're not sure how to start with self-compassion, and then how to then give compassion to others, where do you feel like there was a starting point there, other than the human mind?
It's a great question, Mel. Because I remember starting on a journey of moving towards self-love, and one of the pieces, back 40 years when Jesus wore shorts, and I was working with different leaders and working with different sort of authors and working with workshops and what have you, they were saying, here you are, Cindy, and we're going to go straight to self-love. And that was way too big a jump to me. For me to look in the mirror and say, I love you, Cindy, from a position of self-beration was way too big a jump. It was just too much. I just thought, yeah, that's not me. So I would say that a lot of the leaders that I work with, we look at bringing in metacognition, which is our ability to observe our own thoughts. And I reckon a really key first step is if you just observe during your day the number of thoughts that you have that are self-beration or self-criticism or a real put down of yourself, then just observing it and going, oh, wow, there it is again, we have learning throughout the day. We make mistakes, we trip over something, and just watch what the little mental message is. What's the internal dialogue there? And, you could say, oh, you idiot, right? Oh, there it is, right? You could look in the mirror and say, you're fat and ugly, or you're carrying way too much weight, or, like, oh, there it is. You don't say it out loud, but it's that little message. I think observing those little things through the day, and when you do spend a little bit of time doing that, you go, wow, there's a lot of negative that I'm throwing at myself. So observing it first is a first key step. And then I think a second step that is really critical for us to bring self-compassion is to say, you know what, I might just try and stop those messages. All right. So, next step, you hear it and you trip over something, you go, oh, you idiot. And you go, yeah, you know what? Just enough. I'm just going to put a boundary around it, recognize it, and then put a boundary around it. Say, stop. Just stop beating myself up. And then the third step, I think, would be bringing in something really simple that you're okay saying, like, I'm okay. I'm doing the best job I can. I trip over something and I might go, oh, it's okay. If I know better, I do. But just rather than going, you're magnificent, Cindy, I love you, I think you're, brilliant, and my heart overflows with love. It's probably just going to words like, okay, I'm doing my best. I'm growing into that next version of myself, something that is a little bit more positive and healthier and helpful. And then we can start to move towards recognizing the magnificence in ourselves that other people see so easily, so easily. And if I was to add like a fourth thing onto that, if we were to sit down and write down our own CV, in 5 or 10-year blocks, look back and say, look, the last 5 years, here's the things, the achievements that I've actually done. Here's the things that, I'm most proud of in myself, just to write those things down. And with everybody that I've done this exercise with, you look at it and you go, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. I've got my way through a degree, or I've been working at this place and I've achieved these things. We don't tend to reflect back and see the good stuff. We generally skip over the good stuff and then go, whoa, gee, I mucked up that keynote last year. Well, you delivered 25 and one of them wasn't as good as what it could be, but you're missing the 24 that you delivered. So I think those kind of 4 steps, I think, are really good practical steps moving forward in our own self-compassion.
I love that because that also builds your identity. And I think starting from the who am I and looking at, I'm not my job, I'm not just a mother, I'm not just, all these other labels that we give ourselves. But, what's who is the person of us inside? And what do we bring out?
Yeah.
What do we love? And then adding all those things on top, you're really then forming this is my identity, because I think a lot of us do wrap our identities around our work. And if something happens, and that's what happened to me, like I was a chaplain for 20, 30 years, and in the police and then the military, and then that my whole identity was wrapped around that. So when that got sort of like killed, so to speak, from the medically discharged, it was like my whole identity died with me. Like I lost everything, and that's so hard to like then separate from yourself. But if your identity was actually who you are, then you carry that through your life, and you grow with that, and you learn from that, and you continue to expand on that. And yeah, if we could separate ourselves a little bit from our work.
And when you say like who you are, I tend to go straight to, what are the things that are important to me? Like, what are my values, my personal values?
Yeah.
So for me, one of my personal values is love.
Mm.
I don't see love as lightweight. It's not airy fairy. It's not woohoo. It's very powerful. So that's me, radiating that inwards, and me loving what I'm doing in my life, and me, sharing love amongst other people. And another one would be like contribution. It's in my purpose. That's my purpose, is to contribute to others' lives. That gives me deep fulfillment. And if I can identify my values, personal ones, like what is really important to me, where do I spend a lot of my money? That will give you a bit of a hint. If you spend a lot of your money on travel, for example, then maybe your value is adventure.
Mm.
Maybe it's variety. I don't know, but to have a look at your values will help you see yourself, and then they transcend wherever you go. If you change relationship or you change job, those things you might tweak them as you go along and say, well, this is more important to me now and this is less important to me now, but they do help you identify, this is what I value, this is what brings me joy in that space.
Mm. Mm.
And then your identity is based in deep within a core of you. That Cindy is, kind. I'm trying to be a kinder human being. That Cindy is, an educator in that space. That will go with me to my grave.
And if a leader's in a more of a survival mode, um, so their nervous system is quite high, and they're just surviving day after day, trying to get through. Is there anything that you could speak into that to help them sort of like really calm themselves down and bring themselves to themselves in that?
Yeah, it is. And I know, we tend to load up our leaders in that space. If we've got business owners, that's a different conversation to someone who's in a role, in a high pressure role that's being paid X, Y, and Z and has external pressures on them from higher levels of leader and or shareholders. I think one of the most powerful things that we carry with us is our breath. And I think that the breath is kind of the portable calm app. And I think it is incredibly powerful in order to change our nervous system from a sympathetic nervous system or sympathetic nervous response to a parasympathetic nervous response. And the most powerful breath work, and I'm talking about like a short-term strategy here, like you feel like, oh my God, I'm drowning, not waving, and I'm about to go into a meeting or deliver something, and my nervous system's like this, then the anxiety breath, or the 4 in, a count of 4 breaths in, a count of 4 in one breath, and then a count of 8 on the exhalation. Repeating that 4 to 5 times, we know from a neurological perspective, changes us from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Okay, so that's kind of an immediate sort of calming of your nervous system. And then I think, if you want to have a look around what the next strategy would be, to look at an intermediate or a longer term solution about what is it that you need to take out of your day or your life that is taking away your time from putting time back into yourself. And that's probably, a conversation about, am I busy or am I doing the key leverage tasks within my role? What do I need to delegate? What do I need to say no to? Rather than say yes to, what do I need to say no to in that space? And that's a cognitive process of sitting down and analysing what's happening in my day. Am I okay giving all my time to this role in this space? How can I decrease the responsibility there and either work with a team in delegation and or work with management in delegation, putting boundaries around that so that I do have some clear boundaried time that is just my time. And that when I get to a certain part of my day, that it does come to be my time to ground myself by going for a walk or having a shower or doing some exercise, so that I do find the time and space to calm down the nervous system later on in the day. Those would probably be, the key pieces. But each individual is different. I think the breath work in my own life has been very powerful. It's always brought me to a calm space. Something that I do on a daily basis, something that is my go-to vessel of peace that I try and carry with me throughout the day. And in my own words as a leader, I have 3 words that I go to with this: I'm calm, I'm confident, I'm total class, in terms of trying to deliver the best professional person that I can be in every circumstance.
Yeah, so put some positive affirmations for you in with your breath work. Yeah, that's
yeah, and it's not just the words. It's not just the words. Like, affirmations are terrific when they are embedded in the emotion attached to them. And that's where true change happens. When I say the word calm, I attach a very clear emotional state to it of perhaps that the image behind me is taking myself to that space and feeling emotionally, physiologically, feeling the calmness, like taking myself under the water when I scuba dive. Nobody can get me there. Or, maybe the odd big thing with, teeth. But apart from that, that is that saying the word calm and feeling the word calm, two very different things. And the power lies in the feeling, the emotional state, the change of the neurophysiology at a cellular level is where the power lies with affirmations.
I'm glad we talked about that, because I haven't heard many people talk about that addition on top of that. Like, I've heard a lot of psychologists talk about, say these positive affirmations, and they give, a guideline of what you can say. And I've never heard anyone, and I find that do they actually work? But yeah, you're so right. You need to embody that. You need to feel it to, embrace what you're saying, because otherwise they're just words that are going to go over.
It's just a cognitive process. Like, I can go, I'm grateful, the sun's shining, I've got a lovely dog sitting behind me, this is a nice office. It doesn't mean a cracker. It doesn't do a thing. But if I sit here and I say that I'm grateful for the beautiful dog that sits behind me, and I bring her into my heart, and I imagine she's beautiful face And when I pat her and she looks at me with that big waggy tail, and I open my heart with love and kindness and feel gratitude for this incredible animal that's in my life, and I feel gratitude and I feel emotion in my throat for her because I adore her, that's gratitude.
Mm.
That's the embodiment of an affirmation, to actually connect the words with an emotional state is where the power of affirmations lie, and where you have the ability to completely transform your physiology through an emotional state associated with an affirmation.
What I was thinking when you were talking was that wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we could do that when we're leading others, and what we want to build in our staff, build in our team, and if we can feel what they're feeling and use that embodiment of compassion with our own self, but with also in others as we lead. I could just feel that this beautiful synergy that could, I mean, it would take time, but the gold is what we're building in each other would be just so powerful, and it will, I think it will help a workplace to flourish and to grow together, that we're listening to each other, that we're have a flow of communication.
I agree wholeheartedly. There is an opportunity that sits in front of us as leaders to create trusted, honest and open spaces within our teams and within our workplace, because to ask a team to open their hearts, to speak honestly, is a very vulnerable position. And, you know, the leader probably needs to go first in that space. In terms of exposing themselves as a human and exposing themselves as to what is important to them, and then bringing that within their teams enables the connection to be from a human perspective first, and from a, you know, how can we, you know, change the world with what it is that we're offering here, and how can we create something quite spectacular in our workplace, whatever that field is, from this position of heartfelt leadership from the leader, and then the teams being deeply invested in what it is they do, because it brings them, it enriches their life in some way, it connects with their own purpose, it enables them to contribute to the community in some way, shape or form. And they are then deeply immersed within their role as well as within the team, and they feel trusted and they feel like they have some transparency in there. When things go wrong, they can bring them to the table and they can have non-threatening conversations where we all look towards solutions without blaming and pointing fingers and saying, well, you know, if we had our time again, what could we do better next time?
Yes, that's great. Wonderful conversation. You've got a book coming out. Is it this year or is it already out?
No, it's I should be having Manifest You, which is having a look at business owners as being the handbrakes in their own business, and how a business can only grow as fast as what you do. So that will be coming out in July. That will be available on the website at mindgarage.com.au. Yeah, and if any of your listeners would like to be in touch, I'm available at cindy@mindgarage.com.au.
This is Dr. Mel Baker.
And Sean Manair on Living Reflections.
Thanks for listening.